Remembering Jesse Jackson, an audacious force in American politics who in many ways paved the way for Barack Obama, Senator Raphael Warnock offers reflections. Nearly $80 million in campaign ads have already been devoted to the Texas Republican Senate primary. Congressman Wesley Hunt is running third and might be gaining. He joins us. U.S. talks with Iran make just enough progress, well, to keep them going for a couple of weeks. This as the U.S. military buildup in the region intensified. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. He was born Jesse Louis Burns in 1941 to a 16-year-old mother who was not married to his father because he, Jesse's father, age 33, was already married and living next door in their segregated neighborhood of Greenville, South Carolina. Jesse Louis Jackson, who died today at the age of 84, did not receive his full name until age 14. That's when his stepfather, Charles Jackson, adopted him. Soon thereafter, Jesse was sent to live with his grandmother, a young black boy in the Jim Crow South, rejected by his father and not exactly cherished by his stepfather. That he, Jesse Louis Jackson, would grow up to be a significant figure in the civil rights movement and the first black man to wage not one, but two serious and vote-getting campaigns for the presidency is a story of hope kept alive. You've probably seen that clip today, the Keep Hope Alive clarion call at the end of Jackson's thunderous speech at the 1988 Democratic National Convention. Properly so, because it's worth remembering that Jackson branded hope before Barack Obama did. Jackson's political audacity predated Obama's as well. It was vastly more difficult for civil rights activist Jackson to seek the presidency in 1984 when he did it for the first time than it was for Illinois Senator Obama to do so in 2007. That is why Obama, in a statement, said today he stood on Jackson's shoulders. Jackson's were sturdy but imperfect shoulders. He aggravated some in the civil rights movement who saw him as a publicity hound, reckless with finances and personal choices. In the mid-'80s, he apologized for inadvertently sowing divisions between blacks and Jews. Jackson was also, we should note, among the first unapologetic populists of the modern era, saying at the Democratic Convention in 1984, his constituency was the, quote, desperate, the damned, the disinherited, the disrespected, and the despised. While the means, methods, and racial orientation certainly differed, it's not that great a distance between Jackson's rhetoric and President Trump's vow in 2016 and many times since to uplift America's forgotten men and women. Perhaps that's why Trump has paid tribute to Jackson more than once today. A little later on, Ed O'Keefe will help us understand that relationship. Jackson was a bridge between hard-fought victories for voting rights and public accommodations in the 1960s and the multiracial coalition foreshadowed by Jackson's use of rainbow as a metaphor for America that first elected, then re-elected Obama. Jackson spoke as a preacher, a moralist in the political arena.
If an issue is morally right, it will eventually be political. It may be political and never be right. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have the most votes in Atlantic City. Well, her principles have outlasted every delegate who voted to lock her out. Rosa Parks did not have the most votes, but she was morally right. Dr. King didn't have the most votes about the Vietnam War, but he was morally right.
Fannie Lou Hamer led a protest for black Mississippians at the Democratic Convention in 1964. Rosa Parks led the Montgomery bus boycott. Dr. Martin Luther King led the movement. Jackson, sometimes imperfectly, tried to inherit and advance. In that 1988 convention speech, Jackson described his quest and something he thought of as a kind of contagion of courage.
As for Jesse Jackson, I'm tired of sailing my little boat far inside the harbor bar. I want to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are. And should my frail craft prove too slight for waves that sweep those billows o'er, I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drowse to death at the sheltered shore. We got to go out, my friends, where the big boats are.
Jackson got out to where the big boats are, and there he stayed. Georgia Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, inspired by Jackson in many ways, will join us for a remembrance. But first, as I promised, Ed O'Keefe joins us now for more on the Trump-Jackson relationship. Ed?
Major, it was quite interesting to see the president go there this morning the way he did, because he's correct in that these two men had known each other for quite some time. There's a great anecdote in a new book, new in the sense it came out last fall, from our colleague Abby Phillip, recalling the campaigns of Jesse Jackson and the influence he's had on politics since the 80s, about when Jackson went to a Mike Tyson fight at the Taj Mahal, I think, or the Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, back during his 84 campaign. And who showed up at the pre-party but Donald Trump to give Jesse Jackson a tour of the facility? And they were mobbed by people who were eager to see mostly Jackson, who at the time was, a bit of a political anomaly. And as the president said, was a force of nature like few others before him. Trump knew that. Trump wanted to be a part of that, at least in 1984, when that campaign launched. And to your point, ultimately, they were, in essence, trying to reach the same exact people. Poor, white, rural voters in this country who they both believed had been forgotten. How they got to them, how they appealed to them were quite different, of course, but ultimately they were trying to reach the same people and at different times. Perhaps most notably, it was in the late 1990s as Jackson focused much of his work on the Rainbow Push Coalition, on economic empowerment for blacks and other minority communities, that he worked with a collection of business leaders, especially in the New York area, on diversifying the ranks of corporate America, and specifically the financial industry based there in New York. If you've been to New York, if you've been down to the financial district, you know 40 Wall Street, which is that pistachio-hued older building amid the other skyscrapers, and it's owned by Donald Trump. And he gave Jackson office space in there to run the Rainbow Push Coalition's Wall Street project. And there's video of the two of them at events in the late 90s, essentially joshing each other, for both being magnanimous, self-effacing, and able to fill a room. So, if you're someone who grew up in the 80s and 90s, as I did, or were earlier parts of your career, Major, not to date either of us, these were bold-faced names, right? These were two guys who were around, who dabbled in politics and business, and at different times had competing but also similar interests and goals. And really, in essence, are icons of that era, if not, ultimately successful, at least in the case of Jackson. So for the president to say, I knew him, I worked with him, I supported his work, is absolutely true. He used his statement, however, this morning to bat away those that call him racist and believe he has not been as kind to minorities in the years since. But it is accurate that they had a bit of a relationship. We don't know yet. We haven't heard what the plans are for Jackson's funeral, which is expected to be in Chicago at some point next week. But don't be surprised if the current and former presidents show up to pay tribute, because all of them living currently have had some kind of a relationship with him, most especially, of course, Barack Obama, but also Donald Trump and Bill Clinton certainly as well.
Ed O'Keefe at the White House for us. Thank you so very much. Earlier, I spoke with Georgia Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock on the life and legacy of Jesse Jackson. Here's our conversation. Senator, for those in my audience who remember Reverend Jackson's voice in American politics and those too young to have any memory of it all, finish this sentence for me. Reverend Jackson mattered because.
Reverend Jackson mattered because he changed American politics and placed politics in a moral frame. I sit here as the first United States Senator from the state of Georgia, and while I worked hard in those campaigns, I'm very clear that he was literally the bridge between the civil rights movement and the kind of multiracial coalition that makes someone like me possible in the United States Senate. Alongside my Jewish counterpart, John Ossoff, Jesse Jackson, with his Rainbow Push Coalition, laid the groundwork for the work that we're trying to do to this day. There would be no Barack Obama, no President Barack Obama, had he not put that idea in the ether and demonstrated that someone like him could build the kind of coalition necessary to move the country forward.
And Senator Warnock, you talking about yourself and John Ossoff also exemplifies something that is complex about Jesse Jackson's own legacy. In the '84 speech at the Democratic National Convention, he apologized for things he said that had hurt Jewish Americans, and he pleaded with the convention floor in America writ large to forgive him and to think about a coalition that would reunite Jews in America and African Americans. You and John Ossoff, in the United States Senate, are living exemplars of that.
Yeah, a politician saying I made a mistake and apologizing. Isn't that a breath of fresh air in today's politics? But that's what maturity looks like. He was a moral giant, and he understood that he had made a mistake. He apologized for it, and he moved forward. And he built the kind of multiracial coalition that we need in this moment, in which we are seeing our federal government literally come in and seize ballots in Fulton County, Georgia. We're seeing untrained paramilitary officers on our streets running roughshod over the bedrock constitutional rights of citizens, terrorizing entire communities. His is the kind of moral voice that we need now more than ever.
How did you feel that dynamically in your interactions with him, Senator?
I have to tell you that Reverend Jesse Jackson was my childhood hero. I was a kid growing up in public housing in the 1980s. And I remember walking to the Savannah Civic Center to hear Reverend Jesse Jackson speak as he was beginning his unlikely campaign to run for the United States presidency. And he gave me a glimpse of what's possible in America. He taught me how to say in his own iconic way, I am somebody. And he said it with such power that I believed it. And he's an important part of my own journey as someone who's tried to bring his faith to the public square and bring people together.
I rewatched both his '84 and '88 convention speeches this morning before we sat down, Senator. And there was one line at the beginning of the '84 speech that was not a grabber, but it rings in my ears, and I'd like to see if it rings in yours. Time is neutral and does not change things. With courage and initiative, leaders can change things.
Well, that's right. And he was echoing in those words, words from his own mentor, Martin Luther King Jr., who said, you know, that change doesn't happen and it doesn't roll in. Dr. King put it this way. He said, it doesn't roll in on the wheels of inevitability. Both these men understood that you have to put your body in the struggle. You have to be persistent. You have to stand up time and time again, and you may have setbacks, but you have to keep pushing and bending the arc towards justice.
He also said near the end of that '84 speech, I too was born in the slum, referring to the life of Jesus as well. And just because you are born in a slum does not mean the slum is born in you.
Jesse Jackson centered human dignity. He believed in the somebodyness of every child of God. And his was a dynamic rainbow coalition, the consciousness of which we need to draw upon in this very political moment where there are those who are in power trying to divide us. People who have no vision, trafficking in division, they don't know how to lead us, so they're trying to divide us. Jesse Jackson brought us together, and that's the work that I try to do as someone who was inspired by his ministry and his voice.
He also said this in the 1988 convention speech. Most poor people are not lazy. They are not black. They are not brown. They are mostly white and female and young. But whether white, black, or brown, a hungry baby's belly turned inside out is the same color. Color it pain, color it hurt, color it agony.
He was poetry and spiritual power in the public square. Those aren't the words of a transactional politician, although he was running for office. That's a preacher standing squarely in the public square and calling America to what Lincoln called its higher angels, trying to get us to live up to our ideals.
And how do you regard this day when you see headlines, as anyone can, this past week about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion at the corporate level under constant reevaluation, It's clearly under an executive order assault from this administration. And as you mentioned a moment ago, ICE agents in the streets doing things that probably Jesse Jackson, were he as full-throated as he once was, would be criticizing pretty profoundly.
He certainly would, but it's left to us. I was in Minneapolis a few weeks ago because Reverend Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, white woman and witness named Viola Luiso, who lost her life fighting for voting rights, Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, 2 Jews and an African American. It was always a multiracial coalition that pushed the country closer to its ideals. I went to Minneapolis because I believe, as they do, and as they did, that you have to put your body in the struggle, that the ministry of presence matters, that you have to show up for the poor, the weak, the downtrodden, the marginalized. And that's what informs good public policy. You have to get close to the people. And Jesse Jackson and others taught me that. His voice has been silenced, but his legacy lives on.
Senator Raphael Warnock, I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Our next item, DNA tested from gloves found near the home of Nancy Guthrie did not come back with a match from inside the house or a national FBI database. That's what the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed today. Andres Gutierrez joins us now from Tucson with the very latest on this saga. Andres, what do we got?
Well, Major, we will get to those gloves in just a moment, but we will get to the newest information that we got from CBS News and the fact that the FBI is now probing gun purchases here in the Tucson area. According to the owner of an area gun store, an agent came in about a week or so ago and were shown several images with faces and names on them. Agents inquired about purchases in the last year. The owner said there were several names and images on the sheets, but doesn't remember a specific number of people listed. We have agreed not to name the store or the owner because of privacy concerns. And now turning to the glove. The DNA on that glove did not provide investigators the break that we were all hoping for. That came from a glove that was found about 2 miles away from Nancy's house. It appeared very similar to the one that we saw in those chilling surveillance images. Investigators took that DNA profile and ran it through CODIS, the FBI National DNA Database. And the only reason you'd ever be on that database is because you've been charged or convicted of a crime. The Sheriff's Department says that that profile was submitted this morning. The results came back with no confirmed match. CODIS does hold the profile for over 19 million offenders. The U.S. population, just over 345 million people. So we're talking about a sliver of the U.S. population. So really not a surprising fact that there was no hit. The evidence for this glove is still meaningful in this overall case, but as of today, it has not put a name to that suspect. They're also working through additional DNA evidence that was found in the house, and that's being processed at a lab that the county contracts with out of Florida. Eventually, if there's any evidence there that they deem is worthy to go into CODIS, they will do that. But when CODIS does not deliver, which has not been the case thus far, they will have another avenue with this DNA. They can go ahead and do the genetic genealogy using databases that are separate from the ones from the IFB to see if it could possibly churn up a name here, Major.
Andres Gutierrez, tracking all the developments for us. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. The United States and Iran have finished a new round of negotiation about the future of that country's nuclear program and other issues. The Iranian foreign minister said an understanding was reached on, quote, guiding principles. A U.S. official said progress was made, but significant gaps remain, and that much work needs to be done. CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd joins me now. Sam, always good to have you. This sounds like pretty typical diplomatic language. Oh, principles, work to be done. What struck me is a U.S. official said there's going to be a 2-week gap to wait back for the Iranians. Okay, we're rushing all this military equipment to the region. 2 weeks. How do we interpret that?
Well, we may have a timeline problem. If you look back at the original Iran nuclear deal, which Donald Trump withdrew from during his first term, that took about 2 years to negotiate. So when we talk about 2 weeks, it's actually a really short amount of time. When you're talking about some fundamental strategic gaps, the United States wants to address a range of what we call malign behaviors by the Iranian regime. its nuclear program, its ballistic missile program, its support for proxies, its human rights abuses. And the Iranians are saying, we're just going to negotiate on the nuclear front. So guiding principles are one thing, but there are these big strategic gaps, and the United States may not be patient enough to wait the 20 months that it may take to negotiate another deal.
And yet, and we've talked about this before, Sam, there is a dialogue going on quite separate from these talks in the region. Maybe this isn't the time. Maybe this is the time to keep talking and continue to apply the pressure, use the implied threat of a larger, more visible U.S. military presence to keep the negotiations going, but not to attack.
There's certainly a sense in the region that more instability may not be the best thing. And when you take a look at Iran, there is not a natural replacement to the current regime. So certainly regional powers are saying, if you're going to do something, do it very carefully and thoughtfully so that we don't have another bit of chaos in an already unstable region. At the same time, the United States is preparing the military option. I don't think we're there yet. Yes, there's a lot of military hardware in the region, but when you look at what it would actually take to launch an attack in Iran and to protect U.S. forces and U.S. personnel in the region, we're not quite there yet, Major. We're a few weeks away.
It would be a massive logistical challenge, prolonged in its duration, it would seem, if we launch anything.
Well, and it depends what we're launching, because, again, we're moving all this stuff into the region. The United States and Israel, but the United States has demonstrated under President Trump both the intent and capability to strike nuclear facilities inside of Iran. There was damage done during the initial strikes. The question now is, if additional strikes are implemented, what are they actually trying to do? Are they trying? How do we know where the remaining stockpile of enriched uranium, which is what's used to build a nuclear weapon, do we know where that is? Are we trying to destroy that? Are we trying to target regime leadership? So there are a lot of unknowns about both the scope of negotiations and ultimately what a military strike would be focused on.
And what the consequences therein might be. Sam Vinograd,
Thanks.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Still to come, Hillary Clinton accuses the Trump administration of an Epstein files cover-up. Her answers about Clinton ties to Epstein in advance of her and Bill Clinton's testimony before a House committee next week. Plus, as early voting gets underway in Texas, I will be joined by Congressman Wesley Hunt as he makes a bid to unseat Republican incumbent Senator John Cornyn. President Trump picks a fight with Maryland's Democratic Governor Wes Moore over a pretty large sewage spill in the Potomac. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to The Takeout. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in an interview with our partners at the BBC, said the Trump Justice Department has not complied with the law requiring the release of all Epstein files.
Get the files out. They are slow-walking it. They are redacting the names of men who are in it. They are stonewalling legitimate requests from members of Congress. That has nothing to do with us. Something is going on. They know it. I know it. If they're going to have me testify, I would prefer to do it in public because I want everybody to see it at the same time. If I have to do it behind closed doors, they're not going to like what I have to say because I have very strong opinions about what it is they're hiding and who they are protecting.
Torian Small joins me now from Capitol Hill. So what else did Hillary Clinton have to say about her or Bill's relationship with or to either Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell?
Well, good evening, Major. We know that our reporting partners at the BBC directly asked whether or not Hillary Clinton regretted her ties and her husband's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, to which she said there are no ties. She said that the relationship between both parties were strictly based on the charitable work that they did together through the Clinton Global Initiative Foundation. Take a listen to what she had to say.
We have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work. I don't recall ever meeting him.
Did you ever meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did on a few occasions, and thousands of people go to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it to me is not something that is really at the heart of what this matter is about.
Yeah, speaking of at the heart of this matter, the Clintons are claiming that they're just trying to be as transparent as possible about this. They're saying they've been forthcoming with the House Oversight Committee as it's launched its own probe into the Epstein estate, as well as the people connected to him potentially. But I want to mention one thing that was also asked of the secretary there. There was a photo of her husband, Bill Clinton, in a hot tub that we showed as we teased here. She refuted that claim, saying that there was a hot tub, but again, alleged, and it's on screen right now. It's a pretty interesting photo, but she said that this is no implication of anything nefarious, but again, maintain that they had this working relationship with him, but have been fully disclosing all that information to the relevant bodies as it relates to this, Major.
But Tori, and it's worth level setting this a little bit because the Clintons, both Hillary and Bill, spent quite a few months with the House Oversight Committee trying to work out how this testimony would occur, and it didn't look like as if they were rushing into the venue to testify. And only when it was clear that some House Democrats might vote to hold them in contempt did this get resolved. So one of the things that is yet to be resolved, there's a date and there's a time, but whether it'll be fully public or in private to be released via video later. Do we know anything more about that?
Yeah, well, Secretary Clinton in this interview said that she is going to show up, and whether or not it's going to be public or private is up to the panel. But ultimately, though, she's still advocating for this to be made in the public. She said if this is done behind closed doors, she's going to be essentially unfiltered, going after people she believes may be connected to the Trump administration in her answers. But she wants, as I just said, to be fully transparent about this process. She also pointed out the discrepancies in how the Republican leadership on this panel has handled requesting their information versus others. She said her attorney has been complying with the House Oversight Committee providing documents. Others who have been asked for information have been able to do so in written statements. But she says she believes it's political motivated why they're being targeted in this way, Major.
She also described this, meaning her and Bill Clinton's testimony, as a shiny object meant to distract. Tori Small, Capitol Hill, thanks so very much. President Trump holding off on making an endorsement in the Republican Texas primary. I'll ask Congressman Wesley Hunt how he plans to get it, if it's possible. Next, here on The Takeout. Welcome back. Early voting has begun in Texas. It runs through February 27th. The primary day, for those keeping track at home, and I know many of you are, that's March 3rd. Earlier today, I spoke with Texas Republican Congressman and Senate candidate Wesley Hunt. Congressman, early voting has begun. President Trump still has not endorsed in the Senate Republican primary. How badly do you need the president's endorsement, and what are you going to try to do to get it?
Well, that's actually a great question. And keep in mind that John Cornyn and Collins are the only two Republican incumbents in the entire country that the president has not endorsed. And the whole point about getting President Trump's endorsement is that it's got to be earned. You have to do the work. He's not going to give it out. And it also matters that there are a lot of people that are in this race that have had his back from the very beginning, like me. I was the first person in the country to endorse him this last cycle. I was one of his top surrogates traveling all over the country, not just with him, but as a surrogate for him in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and also down in Nevada and in California, obviously in Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. I traveled around the country on his behalf. And so at the end of the day, the president said just last night, I like all three of these guys. All three of them are my friends. But at the end of the day, he still has not endorsed the incumbent, which means that it still can be earned. And that's exactly what I intend on doing. But most importantly, I want to earn the vote of the primary voter here in Texas. And I do believe that if you earn their trust, and it's clearly been lost for John Cornyn, then you will ultimately earn the support of the president.
Congressman, there's not a lot of polling in this race, but the most recent polling has you running third, but gaining some ground. You're obligated to tell me you're going to win the primary or qualify for the runoff. I respect that. Tell me how you're going to do that.
Well, quite frankly, it's the top two that go into a runoff, and then the winner of the runoff goes into the general election. And most of the polling that you have seen in the general election, I'm already outperforming both of my colleagues. Before the recent polling came out, there was a JR Partners poll that came out and a Signal poll that came out that had me strongly in second place behind Ken Paxton. Now, keep in mind, you have John Cornyn, who is a 24-year incumbent. The first time he was actually put in office as a judge, I was 11 months old. You heard that, 11 months old. He has spent over $80 million on this race, and he is polling in the 20s in his own home state. That is a rejection of the primary voter. And so the only thing we really have to do is stay exactly where we are and just hold court, get into this runoff, and then the people of Texas will actually have a choice between two real conservatives that are going to vote in the vein of what Texans want. They are America First patriots like myself. There are people that are in their early 40s that actually believe in term limits. All of these things are what I keep hearing all over Texas. And so if we keep barnstorming Texas, keep a positive message, let's talk about the issues, no ad hominem attacks, I can assure you that the people of Texas are singing right through it. And that's the reason why John Cornyn is spending millions of dollars against me. And if we were polling in a distant third, I can assure you that this morning he would not have purchased another $1 million hitting me in Texas. And what he doesn't understand is that as an Apache helicopter pilot, as a West Point grad, I like you when you're shooting at me because it means I'm right over the target zone, and I'm just going to stay right here and keep on working.
According to a piece I read in the Texas Tribune late in January, you have missed 1 in 5 House votes since taking office in 2023. Why is that?
Well, keep in mind, especially this year, I've missed quite a few votes. And to be honest with you, it's because I've been trying to unseat a 24-year lifelong incumbent. What I want people to know is this: I can't be in two places at one time. But whenever the president needs my vote, whenever the Speaker of the House has needed my vote this year, I got on a plane, I canceled all my events, and I was right there to ensure that we got President Trump's agenda through. But I want people to know this as well. When J.D. Vance was selected as the vice president, as the vice presidential nominee, do you know how many votes he missed? All of them. He missed all of them. Because when you are trying your best to get your message all over the state of Texas, and I have held over 40 events, I've had over 100 interviews, that's what I've been doing for the past month and a half to ensure that we term limited a 24-year incumbent. Also, last year, I was 2 years ago, I was one of President Trump's top surrogates, traveling around the country with him. So I missed votes there. And also my son was in the NICU when I first got to Congress.
Understood. Chip Roy, one of your Republican colleagues in the House, as you well know, running for Attorney General in Texas, he's missed far fewer votes than you have. Jasmine Crockett, running for the Democratic nomination in the Senate race, also has missed far fewer votes than you have. Isn't that evidence that they can do both at the same time?
Well, actually, Chip Roy's already been around for a long time. Keep in mind, I'm not a career politician. I've only been in Congress for 3 years. And so I had to work on getting my name ID up. And Chip's actually been around for longer than me, so he really necessarily didn't have that issue. And this is the reason why I've already been in the Panhandle. I've been in West Texas. I've been in East Texas, South Texas, you name it. And in fact, there's a heat map that shows I have been all over the state, and I have taken 2 laps. The only thing I could do is run my race. I cannot be compared to other people. And there's a reason why, again, my opponents are spending millions of dollars against me, because the people of Texas care far more about what I am doing to earn their vote by barnstorming Texas, and they know that they will have my vote when it is needed. Keep in mind, I also have one of the most conservative voting records in the entire Texas delegation, which means that my Liberty score is in the 90s and John Cornyn's Liberty score is in the 50s. What people do want is that when you do show up and vote, and they want you to vote, you vote their values. What they don't want is a senator that's going to support gun control legislation in Texas. In fact, I wish John Cornyn would have missed more votes.
Republican Congressman from Texas, Wesley Hunt, I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you for having me on, sir.
Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon, first Republican to back a democratically led effort to curb presidential pardon power. Look at that and more with our political panel. They're right here with me. Doug High, in flagrant violation of the no-tie rule. Kendra Barkov-Lammy looking great as always. That's coming up on the Takeout in a second. You know what time it is. We just promoted. It's political panel time. Democratic strategist Kendra Barkov-Lammy, Republican strategist Doug High. Okay, so we're a little slow on the uptake here on the Takeout. You know, we let things spin and spin and spin around social media before we decide to confer upon them legitimacy via the takeout. So this has been spinning for a while. We're going to show it. At the Munich Security Conference, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was asked about U.S. troops deployment to Taiwan should China make a move. Watch.
You know, I think that this is such a, you know, I think that this is a, this is, of course, a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
Kendra, that's kind of rough to watch.
It is rough to watch. However, I will say it is nice to see leaders engaging across, you know, in a respectful tone, in a respectful way, because that does not always happen with our current leadership here.
Sure. But you are experienced in this space. You would have probably, I think, briefed her on the very high likelihood that you in Munich at the security conference would get some of the common questions about U.S. strategic interests and troop deployments if different things should happen. And Taiwan is usually in the top 5.
Again, I will reiterate where I started, which is it is nice to see leaders engage on a global scale.
Yes.
And, you know, I will also say, if you take this back around, it is an important issue, obviously. It is a very important issue. But I don't know if it is something, yes, it's been percolating on social media. I don't know if it is something that Americans are as focused on at this current climate, given all of the
Doug, you wanted to raise this, so please tell me why you wanted to raise this.
Well, in the spirit of, isn't it great to see leaders get along so well? Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who was also at the Munich Security Conference, not the Munich Beer Hall, she said, in fact, AOC knows more about this issue than even I do. Right. And the challenge of this is when you're stepping on the international stage, like somewhere like the Munich Security Forum, you're doing it because you want to be taken seriously. And you're not taken seriously at this because you have a ton of Twitter followers, which AOC does, or that you can raise a lot of money, which she can. It's I'm a serious and thoughtful person on these global issues. And both of them just absolutely whiffed on it to the point that you wonder, why did you go?
Why did you go, indeed? We mentioned this, Don Bacon. It's not an earth-shattering event, but there is, I think, quietly among Republicans, more and more concern about the pardon powers exercised by President Trump. They cannot be checked. They're plenary. That's a fancy constitutional word. It matters. But they're uncomfortable with it, Doug. And it seems to me that there's something there that ought to be thought about by the Trump White House because this could be a political flank uncomfortable to it.
You would think so. But in the
but maybe not.
In the real world, why would we? And here's the example I would use on this. Look, we all saw the awful image that the president posted of the Obamas. Didn't he learn his lesson after his tweet about Rob Reiner and his wife being murdered by their son? So if you're Donald Trump and you're presumably never running for office again, I won't call him lame duck. I call him YOLO. Why would he stop doing this, especially after the midterms, especially in that 3-month period when President-elect J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or Gretchen Whitmer or whomever it may be is the very real incoming president, that he's going to do whatever he wants to do.
And Kendra, Don Bacon, if he was here, would say, well, it's not just about President Trump, it's about President Biden, too, and Hunter and everything else. I'm just as upset about that as I am with Trump.
Well, this is actually something I think Doug and I both agree on, which is we do need pardon reform, because I do think that
Congress ought to do something.
I think Congress does need to do something in a very bipartisan way, and I think we have actually talked about the fact that it needs to be done. But to go back to your point about Trump in general, there's something called the midterms coming up, which we have now seen what is happening play out across the country in special elections and in primaries, and we are seeing astronomical numbers. So you want to know why? One of many reasons why he should stop doing these things is because it's going to hurt the Republicans in the midterm when Republicans go to vote for these people.
Very quickly, Doug, a lot of Americans think Washington stinks. That's a metaphor. But right now, there's a real, genuine problem. Open sewage from Maryland, Montgomery County, huge pipe pouring into the Potomac. The president has raised all sorts of concerns about it, denouncing Wes Moore, Democratic governor of Maryland, saying that the federal government stands ready, but it's mismanagement of a certain kind and trying to make this political, but it's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, and it's where you can demonstrate leadership. And if you're Donald Trump and you're the builder, it means you fix things. And we haven't seen him really do that.
He's waiting for a phone call, though.
Right.
Come on. When do you wait for a phone call?
You're the guy who builds towers and fixes all these things that are broken. This is a perfect example of how you could do that.
Kendra?
Well, this is infrastructure at its finest. Clearly, we still have some problems that are going on, but this is a federal pipeline issue. This is not a state issue. This is a DC water issue and a not a state issue. And I do think that there clearly is, once again, some blame and shifting and all of the things, but he could be stepping up and he should be stepping up.
Kendra Barkoff-Lammy, Doug, hi. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Team USA, third in the Winter Olympics medal count. 5 days to go. We are live from the games. When we come back, Kelly O'Grady, our friend in Milano. We're watching the Takeout. Welcome back to Takeout. America's women's figure skating team is seeking its first gold medal in 24 years. They are called the Blade Angels, and they participated in the first part of their competition today. Freshman at that event, Kelly O'Grady, joins us now from, we say Milan, they say Milano. Kelly, it's great to have you. Catch us up.
Major, I feel like this is becoming a tradition where I come to you with news of American figure skaters facing heartbreak. Unfortunately, Amber Glenn, she was widely expected to challenge for gold. One of those Blade Angels had a devastating mistake in her short program. You have to complete 3 jumping elements. She crushed a triple axel. She was really looking like she was going to take that top spot, and then unfortunately had a major mistake on the final element. You could see when she was coming off the ice, she was in tears. She finished 13th in this segment. And by the way, Ilya Malinin, quad god, who knows how that feels, was looking on in the audience with sadness. But let's end on some good news. One of the Blade Angels, Alyssa Liu, reigning world champion, on a wonderful comeback after taking a multi-year break from the sport. She is sitting in third. She had a fantastic performance. Artistry, scored a personal best in the short program. So it's not over for any of the U.S. ladies. You know, as well as I do after watching the Olympics the past week and a half, the ice is very slippery. A lot of things can change in the standings, but she looks like the best hope for an Olympic medal going into that long program on Thursday. She's just about 2 points out of first right now.
Olympic pressure is very, very real, and we're seeing it play out with tremendously talented athletes who are just buckling a bit under that pressure. We got about a minute to go, Kelly. Skiing, big air, and speed skating was kind of some good news also for us. That is to say, Team USA.
Yes, we picked up a pair of silvers, though, in fact, you know, you talk about Olympic pressure, both of those, the free ski big air was supposed to challenge for gold, as was the speed skating team pursuit. Team USA has really dominated that event over the past couple of years at the World Championships. But Italy, host country, came in and beat the Team USA by 4.5 points. That was a bit of a shocker, but hey, silver is nothing to sniff at, Major.
Actually, we have a little bit more time, 30 seconds. Kelly, talk to me about the Italy of this, because they're doing so well. The hometown advantage in terms of fans and enthusiasm clearly having an effect.
It really is. And by the way, you know, Italy in that event had been a world champion a couple years ago, but you have so many Italian fans. Every time an Italian takes the ice or the slopes, there is just a roar of cheers. And you have to think that as an athlete, that puts you in a confident state of mind.
Kelly O'Grady, great stuff as always. So indebted to you. Thanks so very much. Happy Tuesday, everyone. You know who this is. You know what we are. We call ourselves The Takeout. Here's what we are. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Dinner Report coming your way next.